Welcome back to the Stable Misery Free Family series. If you've been following along, you've taken some tiny but significant steps on the path to breaking free from stable misery in your family and relationships. Congratulations. So today we're going to do a short recap of all the droplets. Then we're going to dive into our final droplet for this series. And during our time together, I'm also going to share with you something I have coming down the pipes that will help you keep this ripple effect going in your life and home. All right, let's get started. So we kick the series off with some powerful truths about stable misery. You learned that stable misery is not a sign that you are broken or lack the willpower to change, but that stable misery is a habit issue, a sign that you and those you love have formed some unhelpful habits that need to be broken. You also learned why you can think of stable misery not as a flaw, but as your friend. And in order to break free from stable misery's friendly embrace, you don't need to make massive shifts that will require massive amounts of time and energy, but tiny shifts in how you relate to yourself and those you love. Now, not just any shifts, the right kind of shifts or droplets that create ripple effects and have lasting effects on you and those around you. So during this series, I introduced to you 4 of those tiny but powerful droplets. Droplet 1 was your superpower, self-awareness. In this droplet, you discovered that self-awareness is a tool that you must possess to be able to even identify the unhelpful habits that have formed in your relationships that are stuck in stable misery. You also learned 2 crucial signposts that you're likely ignoring, which can help you break free from stable misery. And finally, you took a tiny step by experimenting with my zones of experience chart to start tapping into those signposts. Now, shifting habits takes energy. And if you're anything like most of the folks I work with at the beginning of their stable misery-free journey, you were probably exhausted and depleted. And this makes sense because when you give more than you receive for too long, your nervous system gets out of whack and your body and mind start to break down. And when you're in breakdown mode, is it any wonder that dread sets in when you even think about having to have that conversation with your partner, or you start pondering what tricks will I have to use today to avoid those power struggles with my kids? And this is where droplet 2 comes in, needs knowledge. Now, many of you told me at the beginning of this series that you feel exhausted and depleted. And you learned in this droplet that it's likely because you've ignored your needs for quite a while now. But by joining together droplet 1 and 2, self-awareness with needs knowledge, you learned how you can move towards feeling less exhausted. More specifically, with your awareness superpower activated, you are now able to pinpoint when you and your family are most likely to be in your red and blue zones. For me, it's right when the kids get home from school and right before bedtime routine. And with this awareness, you can prepare for those moments by meeting your needs, checking in to see what your needs are, and then meeting those needs to the best of your ability before those crazy making moments occurred. You also learned how to use the 1 millimeter move question to help you do just this. Now, for me, right before the kids get home from school and right before bedtime routine, what I've learned about myself is that on those nights where I can take just 20 minutes for myself before picking up the kids and before starting bedtime routine works magic for me. Magic. I'm an entirely different person. Seriously. If you looked in the window when I have my 20 minutes versus when I don't, you'll be like, just not the same person. Not possible. So figuring out what are your needs and using that needs knowledge to get yourself what you need before those crazy making moments. Okay, moving on. You also know that when you're stuck in stable misery, you can unknowingly get into the habit of exchanging red zone and blue zone energy with your partner and with your kids consistently. This looks a lot like interactions that are angry frustrated, overwhelmed, or riddled with distraction. Okay. Through droplets 1 and 2, you learn to shift yourself into more purple zone energy by focusing on you. In droplet 3, energy adjustment, you learned how to use research supported tools to bring your newfound purple or purplish energy into your family interactions. And we know that the energy you give directly impacts the energy that you receive. So in this third droplet, you learned how to directly impact that energy exchange. Now, in this droplet, you also learned why starting with date nights and family fun nights can actually be counterproductive to your attempts to breaking free from stable misery. So if you've not listened to that droplet, please go back and listen before using any of those tactics or moving further with this next droplet that we're about to go into. So now we are at our final droplet for this series, droplet 4. But before I dive in, please be on the lookout for information from me on how you can keep this ripple effect going. As we said at the beginning of this series, the point of these droplets is to help you break unhelpful habits, but that can take time, right? And it's easy to get off track and fall back. So I'm going to share with you some opportunities in the upcoming weeks to stay stable misery free. Okay, if you're listening to this audio and it's after August 2023, check the description below for more information. Okay, on to droplet 4. Droplet 4 is connection. Now you may be thinking, wait, why didn't we start here? Well, when you try to connect without self-awareness or with a bucket of unmet needs on your back, your capacity to connect authentically will be lowered, and you'll likely sabotage or undermine any attempts that you make to connect. Let me give you some examples. There's a tool that I use with my clients called the relationship lift. Okay. So imagine you and I are trying to lift a heavy box. Now, in order to lift the box together, we need to synchronize our efforts with something like a simple 1, 2, 3 lift. But what happens if we try to lift the box without syncing our efforts? Right? If I put effort when you're not, and you put effort when I'm not, because we don't know when the other one's going to lift, what's the end result of that? The box doesn't move. Think of your relationship as the heavy box. You and your partner, or you and your child likely try to lift the relationship or make efforts to connect without really sharing your ultimate intention. It's like you and me trying to lift the box without saying 1, 2, 3, lift. You put forth effort when your partner's putting forth effort, or you put forth effort when your child isn't putting forth effort, and they put forth effort when you're not. What's the end result? The relationship doesn't move. Okay. Now, this is really interesting because I always talk to my clients about sometimes, especially our children, when they're putting forth effort, it often doesn't look like it. It could look like them being really frustrating and annoying, or doing annoying things, or making noise, right? During till we're like, what are you doing? Right? What's happening? Why? Right? So be on the lookout for that, because sometimes their efforts to connect aren't exactly what we would expect. When my husband and I were in stable misery, I would ask him, hey, want to watch a movie? And if he said anything but, oh, yes, absolutely, my lovely, darling wife, I would love nothing more than to share a cinematic adventure with you. Anything short of that. That's totally logical. I mean, I would tell myself with all the blue zone energy I could muster, see, I tried. He didn't. I'm done. But the truth is, I never explicitly told him that I was lifting, right? That was my attempt to lift. So he didn't realize the significance of my ask. I unwittingly sabotaged or undermined my attempt to connect by not communicating directly. Similarly, with your children, you might ask them to do something together without saying that you're trying to do this to strengthen the bond. And they just may kind of brush you off or turn to the side, right? There's a reason we don't tell other people, especially our partners and our children, when we're trying to lift. And that's because it's vulnerable. It's vulnerable to say, hey, I'm trying here. And that's fair because we might say, hey, I'm trying here. And they might say, yeah, okay, but I don't want to lift right now. Or I don't want to lift with you right now. And that's really hard to hear. If that does happen, though, remember, breaking old habits and forming new ones in your most sacred relationships requires patience and practice. Some days your partner or your child may not be ready to lift. Do your best to honor where they are and avoid blaming or shaming them for not being ready to lift just because you are. And the best way to do this is by stepping back, owning your feelings in that moment, and then asking yourself the 1 millimeter move question, right? Or figuring out what is it that I need in this moment to be okay. Okay, because it is not your partner nor your child's responsibility to make you feel okay or to meet your need. All right, so empowering yourself to do that is going to take you farther than you can imagine. Okay, now above all else, keep doing the work, not for them, but for you. Because you now know that regardless of how others respond or react, you living your life in red or blue zone energy is not the path to a fulfilled life. When I embraced this truth that my sense of fulfillment was within my control, when I worked on being self aware, when I worked on keeping my energy and emotions regulated, I actually found that I had more capacity to be with and accept what was in each moment. So when my husband declined my offers to connect, instead of, I tried, he didn't, I'm done, I found that I had more capacity to think, I tried, he can't lift right now, and that's okay. Because I'm okay, or at least I will be. There were also times where this increased capacity also allowed me to lean in and get curious. Right? I might ask him questions like, do you not like the movie? Or is tonight not a good time for you? Sometimes I was even likely to get even more vulnerable and say, I was thinking that we could do this to spend time together and connect a bit. So I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on that? Or what are your thoughts on when would be a good time to do this? So here's your experiment for this week. I encourage you to try the relationship lift with your partner or with your child. Now be explicit about your desire to connect and invite them to join you. Offer some ideas, but be open to letting them lead with what they want to do. This is especially important with kiddos. Remember, it's okay if they're not ready to lift right away. Keep practicing the droplets, stay aware, name your needs, keep communicating, strengthen the connection where and when you can by lifting together when you can, okay? And in the meantime, hit reply or comment below, depending on where you are hearing this. And let me know, what is your biggest takeaway from this droplet on connection, or your biggest takeaway from this entire series thus far? Also, let me know about any shifts that you've noticed in yourself or your family as a result of experimenting with these droplets. I want to celebrate with you. And also, I love hearing from you. And lastly, stay tuned. Maintaining these new habits can be hard, okay? But I'm not going to leave you hanging. In the upcoming weeks, I'm going to share with you how you can keep this ripple effect going in your family. All right, I'll see you next time.